Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. With me today is Kristian Andreassen, VP of Product Development at Conception Nurseries. Thank you very much for joining me today, Kristian.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. Kristian, I always like to start with a little bit of background. So how did you get your start in the cannabis industry?
It's about, I'd say it's about 18, 20 years ago. I grew up in upstate New York, moved to California, watched some of my friends get into the industry early on in the Prop 215. Always just use the plant on and off throughout the majority of my life. And just really got interested in the growing side as some friends got into it. So I was actually based out of Lake Tahoe at the time, and a lot of people were like kind of supplementing their income. All that was actually done in garages. Just watched a lot of friends get into it and kind of piqued my interest and really started as a hobby just for, personal use, and it kind of expanded from there.
After you made the move from upstate New York, what were those early days like?
I was actually in college. I came out to California to go to college, and it was late 90s, 99, 2000. So kind of watched the birth of the Proposition 215 build. I was actually competing professionally snowboarding, so I was actually using it for pain management, and had some friends that would make salves and balms for inflammation and stuff. So really watched the kind of the birth of the Prop 215, the medical side of it start to happen.
So a professional snowboarder, can't say that today. How are your knees doing?
They're doing pretty bad. I've had a couple of surgeries. I actually need to do at some point, like partial knee replacements. Back then it was big jumps and flat landings. So they didn't really have a lot of that figured out yet, like they do now. So, yeah. I still, to this day, I still use, I have some like arthritic knees. So I still use actually a lot of CBD and THC to help with the inflammation, along with like an alcohol-based kind of formulation that I make, and it really helps with the inflammation and arthritis.
No, I completely agree, and I'd be interested to learn more about what works for you, just because I find that some of them are very ineffective for inflammation and pain, but when you find the right one, it can really do the trick.
I actually use a CBD. I actually use there is a Chinese herbal supplement that I actually infuse with. It's called Did That Jiao. It's an alcohol-based inflammation with a bunch of Chinese herbs, and so I actually infuse that with CBD isolate, CBD isolated, and some THC.
So the early days in Lake Tahoe, did you start with a grow in your garage?
I did, yeah. Actually, it was in a spare bedroom. It's like 4 lights in the spare bedroom, and first couple failed miserably. And then I think it was probably the third one actually did pretty well. Hit like over a pound of light, and it was way too loud. It was kind of stinking up the whole neighborhood. I was kind of freaking out that I was gonna, have someone kicking down the door. But that never happened. at that point, and then just kind of those lights turned into a garage, building out a garage, and then that turned to multiple garages for a while too.
So were you born with a green thumb, or did you earn it?
I definitely earned it. I studied computer science, so I have like kind of an engineering background. It's funny. I thought I could, as having engineering background, like just all inputs and outputs. And I thought I could just look at the inputs and create a kind of a recipe, and it would just happen like that every single time. And I was very mistaken. There's so many different variables that happen along the way, and things that you can't really uh, you know track. So yeah, it was painful for the first couple, and then just trying to learn how to read the plant and understand the plant. It really uh, morphs over time.
So as an engineer, did you try to gain more control over the plant, or did you sort of accept that variability?
I accepted the variability and just tried to like really learn, listen to what the plant was saying. The plant tells you a lot. And it took a second, back then, like no one was really tracking. They didn't want data around, in case the door got kicked in. Um, but with my engineering background, I was able to, encrypt and keep like data logs and just like, kind of notebooks in computers and stuff, and just trying to figure out, yeah, how, things, changes I would make, or variable, environmental changes and nutrient changes, things like that. Just really tried to look at, what I was doing with my inputs and how that was, changing my outputs.
Did you have any sort of aha moments along the way when you were starting your path in cannabis?
Um, Not really. I just felt really drawn to it. Like I kept failing forward for a while at the very beginning. And I just felt something. I was really drawn to what I was doing. I guess that would be like an aha moment. It was really, I felt like I was on a path of learning and understanding this plant better.
So when did you transition from the legacy market to the professional market?
Um, it happened during like the 215. I would say that was probably about 12 years ago. I kind of left tech and went into this full time. California had a year that I want to say it was like 2013. They tried to get it on the ballot. It failed, but at that point, Colorado had opened up to legalization, and um, I just saw a pathway forward, and it was something that I wanted to really pursue. So we grew for a while for the medical market, and then we had some of the first licenses in California, in uh, in Sacramento. We had some indoor licenses and some of the first nursery licenses, and yeah, it was pretty early on. I think that would have been like 2016, 2017, roughly.
So after you were one of the first to receive those licenses, what was it like? Did you have everything set, ready to turn the lights on? Or was it like, okay, we have the license, now what?
We had everything kind of set. Sacramento was one of the first to actually approve uh, approve licenses once the state gave them a kind of a foundation, and then Sacramento started to go out and look at some of these facilities that were licensed, and actually put a pause, because like they really didn't have um, the building side of things. Like I remember one of the fire marshals were like, I don't know how Sacramento hasn't burnt down from some of these buildings that had been done during the 215 era. Um, so we had like, we, we were allowed to grow while the city was starting to build um, their requirements or building requirements. Um, so I would say like we were cultivating probably 2 to 3 months after, they allowed it, legally. Um, but there was a lot of evolution that happened during that time. The use of CO2 supplements, like it felt like every time a building inspector or fire marshal would come in, they'd make us jump through a bunch more hoops, get a bunch more equipment, so it was painful for the first couple of years as they decided what they wanted to see. We would always have to jump through hoops as quick as we can without getting um, having our grow being paused or anything like that. So,
How did you come to Conception Nurseries?
I met the CEO Kevin pretty early on. He was actually over at Cookies and Connected at the time, and we were selling genetics. And um, I really, him and my vision like really aligned. One of the big things is I've been breeding for probably 12, 13 years, and as the market has adapted and changed over the years, there's a lot of people that still rip off breeders. They the strains have always been coveted. I think they're being more coveted now, because with this industry now you need more um, differentiation. So he had an idea of paying the breeders royalties. Trying to get them to do what they do best and keep spurring innovation. So me and him saw eye to eye right away. Tissue culture has always been a big focus of mine. In the Prop 215 days, I had a cut of Girl Scout cookies, and at one point it just started to self-pollinate. Would never show any like male flowers or anything. We would finish a round and drop it off at a dispensary, and all of a sudden there were seeds in it. So I did a lot of research. Back then we were talking on message boards and things like that. And there was a guy out of Oakland that was talking about the importance of tissue culture and how it could actually revert the genetics. He was selling these tissue culture kits. At that point, I'm cultivating in the garage. I ordered his tissue culture kit. Took I don't know, 200, 250 initiations, and it failed miserably. There was, being in a garage, it's pretty hard to, have a sterile environment. So, but as the industry started to evolve, I felt like it was something that was, we really needed to figure out. The importance of, preserving a genetic, being able to turn it back. As the Prop 215, rolled into the adult use, a lot of people were spraying pesticides back then. We were all sharing genetics. You never know, like, who down the line had sprayed something. Some of those pesticides will be in the plant tissue for multiple generations. Watched a lot of friends start failing for pesticide use that had never sprayed anything. So more and more, like, I realized the importance of tissue culture, so that became a focus. And Kevin Kevin saw the same thing. His years that connected in cookies, buying plants from nurseries. There was always pests and pathogens. So, our ideas really aligned, and came on board as a VP of product development. So really curate the menu, work with breeders, trying to get the right strains on the menu. Working with the cultivators. I still cultivate about 20,000 square feet of mixed light cultivation. So it's really about, testing the genetics and having the right thing on the menu for the cultivators.
How do you pay breeders royalties?
So we use metric. So every transfer of that genetic for a period of time. So we do it by quarters. So at the end of the first quarter, we'll tally up. We'll run a report on that cut sold a couple thousand, and we run a report and then pay them based off of a royalty percentage off of that plant.
How do you choose what strains go on the menu?
It's tough. I've broken it up into a couple different areas. In cannabis now, it's really it's moving quick. It's a lot about hype strains. Kind of what the breeders or the market wants changes very quickly. With tissue culture, it's difficult because when we initiate a cultivar, it takes about a year for it actually to become commercially viable. So having a good pulse on the industry is key. Knowing what's selling, what's not selling. Right now there's this huge wave of purple candy. And if it's not purple candy, if you're playing on the wholesale market, it really is not moving at all. So trying to find the right thing and is tough. We also don't want to homogenize the menu, so it's a balancing act. Working with the breeders too. A lot of these breeders are the ones that are setting the trends. So we work along closely with them of getting the right strain and working with marketing, to kind of align and run parallel to build the demand for the strain as well too. We're trying not to go out there and grab what everyone else has and resell that, because of that, year long, to get to a market, things can change really quick in a year. So I think what we found that works is working with the breeders that are building the hype for these strains, and having them hold something back for a year is also tough. But they're starting to see the value and being able to license genetics and someone that's paying them on time and kind of doing what they said. Doesn't always happen in this industry, unfortunately.
No, it's amazing how you can move ahead of your competition just by paying on time. How have these strains lost their original lineage over time?
I hear that a lot nowadays. And it's kind of funny because I feel like cannabis is almost like fashion. It's cyclical. I hear so many people being like, "Oh, if I had that cut back again," sour diesels kind of come back into the picture, or original OGs. It's really going back to farmers or cultivators that have held on to these genetics for years. We have a good network of people that have been in this a lot longer than I have, that are still coveting and holding some of the original strains. And that's where tissue culture really plays a major role, because we can bank things really easy. We can put them into storage and preserve things. But it also is turning things backwards to what it was like from a seed is one of the cool things about tissue culture. And we there are a lot of relationships with people that have been in Mendocino or Humboldt for 30, 40 years that have, held some of these streams close. Um, I remember going to a friend's farm for years, and he had one of the best cuts of OG I had ever seen, and you could smell it, half a mile away before you even got to his property. And over the years, I watched it like degrade and just not have the same vigor and smell. And a couple of years ago, took his cultivar in and cleaned it up and gave it back to him. And he actually had tears in his eyes when he ran it for the first time. It was like you said, it had he hadn't smelt it like this for 12, 15 years. The science is really able to help.
So when you say you took it in and you cleaned it up, what did you do to essentially reverse engineer it?
So we do meristem. So you actually take the tiniest piece of the newest growth. The apical, so the very top of the plant, has what's known as the meristem. Take a little piece of that tissue and you put it into initiation solution. And that part of the plant actually is not connected to the vascular tissue yet. It's kind of like, for me being a tech guy, it's kind of like, at that point, like, it's like a computer where you upload a virus, once it connects to the vascular system, you, any kind of pathogen or pests, you have, kind of a point where it can, infect it. So by taking the meristem, you're actually able to get it before any kind of the virus has affected the plant. And then just through the tissue culture process, that will actually rebuild the tissue and rebuild like the genetics from its original state.
Okay, so it's possible to recover some of these original strains.
Absolutely. There are viruses and viroids that are harder to clean and not 100%. So it's we do extensive testing after and to make sure that we clean them up.
Okay. Can you think of a case where you just weren't able to save it?
Yeah, with the hot plate and viroid, it's tough. It's not 100%. And there's a lot of people out there saying that they can clean everything. And a lot of people are out there kind of multiplying it down so that viroid is undetectable, but years later it kind of comes back. Or not even years later, months later, it can come back. That one's probably the trickiest one to remove and to clean. It's like I said, it's not 100%. I think we're still learning a lot about that viroid. And we test very heavily before we put anything into initiation, and we try to only put things in there that aren't affected with the viroid. So we can, we know that things are clean. There's no chance of cross contamination on kind of how the SOPs of the tissue culture lab work. So, we try to keep them clean from the beginning.
What's causing the issue? Is the problem inexperienced cultivators? Is it, has there been an influx in inexperienced cultivators as, new states have come online so quickly?
Yeah, I mean, cultivators and nurseries, honestly, if they don't know how to handle, HLVD is spread really easily. It can be all forms of vectors from tools or actually touch, recirculating systems for fertigation. There's pests can move it around very easily too. a lot of nurseries, or even in-house nurseries, like if the cultivation group is doing their own nursery as well, it's not having the right protocols, moving, touching one plant, going to another plant, touching that plant, it's as simple as that. You can move it, pretty easily.
Okay, so just stick to the basics for some of the rookies out there.
Yeah. That's why I think it's, like tissue culture nurseries are important. Over the last couple of years, we've seen, an explosion of this virus, the thyroid being transferred between, cultivation facilities. And, I was talking with a testing lab that tests for it, and they were seeing anywhere from 40 to 50% of all genetics being tested being infected with this viroid. And for the cultivation group, like it can see, we've seen 20-30% loss in crop yields. And it's difficult, especially in this time and age when that could be your margin for the season. So
when did you see that explosion of the viroid?
It was always around. Like I said, even in the Prop 215 era, like you would see, we called it dudding. The plant wouldn't do much. And, most of us would just toss that plant away. We wouldn't spend much time with it. Fast forward a couple of years later, nurseries started to come online at the retail level. And I think we really saw an explosion at that point because no one was really testing for it. No one, I think people knew that there was an issue, but they didn't know what it was. I would say like once we got to like, a year or two into legalization, a lot of people started to test. And, as there was this massive explosion of, plants needed, and you watched it get passed around and really affect cultivators. It kind of built up over the years, but, I'd say like if you were, sharing genetics in, the mid 2000s, 2005, 2010, like you definitely saw, you saw it around.
Does the industry have a problem with strain authenticity?
Absolutely. I think the name game is runs rampant. Like I said, the industry is, the demand is changing so quick that some people can't keep up. We see a lot of people rename a lot of the strains, to get another dollar or two on their units. And, I feel like we're in the beginning of like the kind of the tech boom for cannabis, really trying to understand, trying to map the genome, trying to map all the strains that are out there. There's other companies that started and had really bad data. We work with a company out of Massachusetts called Medicinal Genomics. And every cultivar that we bring in, we actually map for authenticity. We put a fingerprint on it, and which kind of helps. At some point, we hope that, the federal government will allow patents on some of the strains. So we're actually helping some of the breeders. But also just authenticity, that we're selling, the real strain. There's a lot of nurseries that are out there that'll just grab something that's hot and new, and they don't know if it's the real one. So they will, just kind of go out and sell it, and not knowing if it is really truly the one. So, we go right to the source, we authenticate it, we map the genome and fingerprint it.
So people are just changing basically changing the label. Isn't there any, I feel like labeling is so carefully guarded these days. There's nothing that regulators can really do to protect against that?
Not at the regulatory. just the amount of product that's, flowing through the system, it's kind of tough. Um, yeah, I don't know a way that the regulatory agencies could really do that. I think it really comes on to the nurseries and the cultivators. Like I said, some of them are just trying to, stay afloat, and the name game is being abused. But yeah, unfortunately, it's we're trusting and verifying at the same time. So I think that's it. Right now the only thing we can do is on the nursery side is to get it right directly from the source and verify it by mapping the genome.
Do you think that IP protection, the patent process, is the future of cannabis genetics?
I do. Developing a strain, phenohunting, propagating takes years. R&D is very expensive. And there's a lot of time, effort, and money that is put into developing these strains. It's not much different than, the wine industry or the hop industry, so it has to be protected. I think this is one of our only true IP routes in this industry, is really, the genetic development.
So what do you tell people when they come to you and say that, you should just free the plant and it should be free and open to everyone?
I definitely agree with that. If you look at, seed producers and vegetables, not everyone's going to give you all the seeds that they covet, right? People go out there and sell seeds. It's no different in this industry. We're putting the time and the effort into breeding it, crossbreeding it, stabilizing it, hunting it. That we should be, if we're putting that kind of effort into it, like we should be awarded, and for that time and that effort. So, yeah, I mean, there are definitely some strains that have been around for a long time that we can't really track. But if someone's putting the time and effort into creating something better, I really think that they should be awarded, for their energy and their time.
Do you have any strains that you've personally created that you covet?
Yeah, definitely. I also licensed some of my strains to Conception as well. Um, Been a handful of ones over the years. One of my favorite ones is just coming out right now, called the Blue Andes. It's the original blueberry and the original Thin Mint Girl Scout cookie. It's actually two of the first strains I ever brought through tissue culture, and got lucky. When I put them together, they really have a kind of a candy nose that people are looking for. A lot of the blueberry, a lot of the Girl Scout cookie in that.
Is Blue Andes available yet?
Yep. It just hit the menu this quarter for Conception.
Okay.
The first couple packs have just gone out this month.
Okay. Any other strains of note that you want to mention?
Apple Scotty is also another favorite of mine. It's apples, bananas, times biscotti. It's a great commercial cultivar, really botrytis resistant, really mold and pest resistant. It's got a great nose. I like kind of the funkiness of some of the gelatos, and it kind of comes through in that strain.
No, hope I have a chance to check those out, man. Those sound appealing.
Thanks.
In your opinion, will rescheduling change cannabis clone and tissue propagation?
I think it will. I think, it's not perfect like what's on the table right now. For the last almost decade, we've been dealing with, an imperfect structure of logistics, and but I think the interstate commerce is what really needs to change. Being able to move things, without borders. And I think there's a lot of genetics that are being developed in different areas that have attributes that would might like I said, the apple Scotty, like we don't deal with a ton of humidity here in California, but New York does. I think the genetic development and will continue to evolve, and being able to transfer things from one state to another. I think will also help the industry as well too.
Anything else that's currently on the table in terms of rescheduling or potential descheduling that you'd like to see changed?
I mean, a perfect world, I'd love to see the descheduling. I think that's where it really needs to be. This is a plant that has a lot of medicinal value. So, unfortunately, the rescheduling feels a little bit more like a money grab. But like I said, like, we need to loosen the reins. I'd like to see everything, removed, but I don't think that'll happen that quick. But for me, I'm excited, to have this regulatory change, because the whole medicinal side is not really able to be captured yet, with real, scientific advancements, and it seems like we're all, last couple of years we're still identifying new cannabinoids and new terpene profiles, and with rescheduling, I think we'll see a lot more, money for grants and research. I'm a big believer in the medicinal side. I just hope that, the people that have been putting in all the years and effort and time, will be able to, participate, and it doesn't, get wrapped up into, bigger corporations, things like that.
Is there any way to make sure or to try and give some of these original breeders of legacy strains a little bit more credit, perhaps some compensation for their strains?
Yeah, definitely. We've people have brought things into us, and we've gone out and sought out some of the original breeders, and shared royalties with them. Like, it's really trying to track people down. Some people don't want to be tracked down, but yeah, I mean, being able to verify, a lot of these people still have, within their network, the original cuts too. Again, it goes back to, the trust and verification, mapping the genome and making sure that, they were the creator of something, and trying to get them paid for that.
So in your 18 to 20 year history, what has been the best strain that you've seen?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, as a person, the people around me. So I'm always, I love what I do, and I'm always like in the garden saying, "Oh, this is the best. This is the best." There's been so many over the years for me.
If you had to pick
There's
one.
actually, it's kind of funny. There was this one that, actually, Canorado, a breeder out of Colorado. I've worked with him for the past 8 to 10 years, and he developed one, and he only had the flower, and he handed off the flower. And me and my wife, my aunt, and another close friend, we were sitting around smoking it one night, and we started giggling like we were, smoking for the first time again. My aunt's got 50 years of smoking, and everyone was just giggling. They couldn't stop. Like, you felt like you were 16 again, and smoking for the first time again. Unfortunately, he never saved that cut, and I just remembered, smoking. It's like a half ounce or something like that. Like, I kept it around for as long as I could until it was gone, and kept on saying I really wanted that one again, because as the development of some of these strains, like, a lot of people say that they're too strong, and they might bring on some paranoia and stuff like that. But that one was called the Rocky Dennis, and it was so uplifting, and I just remember sitting around just giggling like nonstop. And I think that was, one of the first things that really attracted me to cannabis use is, having, kind of that effect. That'd probably be one of the ones I wish was still around.
Well, you said you had an engineering background. Any interest in moving back to the tech sector, or are you in cannabis for the duration?
I'm definitely in cannabis for the duration. I think I'm too deep into it now. Like just with the roller coaster ride over the last couple of years, I definitely, thought crossed my mind. Like I said before, like I feel like there's almost like a higher calling for me in this industry. I really feel attracted to this plant, and it feels like the universe has guided me through my journey. So kind of sticking on this path.
Okay. Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time. I mean, before we get out of here, is there anything else that you want to make sure the Cannabis Equipment News audience either knows about yourself or your work at Conception Nurseries?
Yeah, I just think, the importance of tissue culture in this day and age can't be talked about enough. There's different levels of tissue culture too. Conception is the only Gen Zero, meaning that every single plant that we put out is done through a lab sterile environment. Still being a cultivator, when I grow traditional clones, I see such a big difference from the Gen Zero clones. There's more health, bigger, more yield, higher potency, higher hash. I can't stress it enough, the importance, especially in this day and age, of really getting the best start will give you the best end, as a cultivator.
When cultivators are looking at nurseries, what are the most important things for them to look at when choosing a partner?
The testing that happens from a pathogenic standpoint. Like I said, HLBD is definitely being spread around by a lot of nurseries. And that's really important, and then also, like I said, the breeding side of this, we all put a lot of time and effort into what we're doing and creating new strains. And, a lot of people will go out there and get a strain and just repropagate it. Really the ones that are working with the breeders, it's going to spur innovation, and, keeps the breeders, doing what they do best. I think, those two are the most important things to me.
Well, Kristian, you're doing some incredible work, and I just really appreciate you sharing a little bit about it today.
Appreciate the time. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@cannabisequipmentnews.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Kristian Andreassen, VP of Product Development at Conception Nurseries, I'm David Manti. This is the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Welcome to the Cannabis Equipment News Podcast.